Welcome to our series of careers related videos that we're creating Hailsham Community College in partnership with the East Sussex Careers Hub. I've got guests here today from Cheesmur Building Contractors. We've got Steve, Jen and Dan. Hi, thanks for giving your time up this morning. So our focus today is going to be on English in construction jobs. So I'm just going to throw that question over to you. Often our teachers are asked, why am I going to use this when I'm out at work or in the real world? So over to you guys. Why is English important in the jobs that you do?
Well, I will start briefly. So, from the point of view as a director and an employer, if somebody wants a job, they're at the very least going to be able to communicate with me very clearly and tell me what they're good at, what they're not good at, and present a good example when they come for an interview. And most jobs now, you do need a CV. And you need to be able to prepare your CV and write your CV out. And the way that CVs are written and presented give the very first impression before we meet somebody. So it's very important you get across what you're good at and what you like to do outside of work as well, because that's very important. But it's communicating all those things. And depending what you're doing, pretty much everybody now deals with the emails. It's okay to use and text. It's okay to use shortcuts and abbreviations with your friends and family. But when you're in a work environment, you need communicating and people understand what it is you're saying, or you clearly understand the instructions you're being given. So just on that very basic level, just for communication, you need a level of English. And I would also point out, if your spelling isn't great, don't worry too much. A lot of people in our industry who are designers, architects, engineers, because they think in 3 dimensions, they're often dyslexic, but they're successful, but they can still communicate. They can still write a sentence. The fact that they'll sometimes muddle things up, they'll get in their message across, they're communicating. They've worked hard to do it, they communicate. So what I'm saying is, just because your spelling might be a bit iffy, don't worry. As long as you can communicate and get the message over that people can understand, that's the important thing. And that all comes down to English. So Jen, did you want to look at it?
Yeah, so for me, working in the accounts department, I need to be able to communicate with all kinds of different people. So my colleagues in the office, the guys on site, suppliers, as well as our clients. Mostly it's by telephone or over email. So email is important, that you can get the correct information across and the person that's reading it understands what you're trying to say. Because any miscommunication could lead to problems with getting materials to site. So that's really important, and also making sure that the people within my team have that information as well. And also, if you're sending emails externally to clients or suppliers, you've got to make sure that you're doing it. You need to keep it professional, because you're representing the company. So within the office, it's not so important, but I think you need to have a good structure, I think, to have a good presentation.
Yeah, off the back of that, a lot of my job is sending an inquiry as an email to a company that we may have never spoken to before. So essentially, that first email is a bit like Steve was saying. That's a bit like a CV for our company, because it's the first contact they've had. So they might base our whole working relationship might start with that email. So it has to be professional, it has to be polite. I've also got to get across the points that I'm making. More often than not, I'm asking for quotes. So again, sounding a bit crass, I'm trying to get something out of them. So how am I going to do that? Do I need to persuade them? Does it need to be, do I need to buy the quote off them? Do I need to just talk it out of them? how am I going to, how am I going to use my grasp of the English language and my abilities to type an email to get what I need out of a subcontractor. And in the first place, to get that information to them, it's been sent to us. So I will sit there and get a new inquiry through myself, which has pages and pages and pages of information and contracts, specification documents. I'm not going to read every word, so skimming and scanning for key information through those documents is a really, really useful skill. I might have 20 minutes to get the key points of a job, the key specifications, understand the key elements of the contract. Then I have to get that into an email and get that politely, informatively, and sort of usefully to our subcontractors. And that's all English. That's all the manipulation of the English language. And the better at it you are, the easier your job will be, basically.
Yeah, and coming in again, what Dan said, there's all that information. So Dan's dealing with that at an office level when he's pricing jobs that people have asked us to give them a price for. If we win that job, so if you're the carpenter on site, you're getting past that information to use, and you've got drawings and specifications, but you need to read, you need to know, you need to understand what materials you're going to need and what fixings you're going to need, what screws and bolts and what tools you're going to need, and you're getting that, you're forming that in your head based on your expertise as a carpenter, but also based on that information, the written word in front of you. You've got to understand it, because if there's any misunderstanding or you don't read it properly, and it does happen, and you build something, and then the supervisor comes around, the site manager comes around and says, why have you done that like that? Oh, well, it says here it's this, and the site manager will say, no, it doesn't say that, it says this. You've got that, and that could cause a big problem. If you've got a really expensive piece of kit and you've cut it wrong, and you've got to order another expensive piece of kit, that can have a significant impact on a project and the profitability of a project, because somebody didn't read the instructions properly.
Is that similar to listening skills as well, Steve? You must get some instructions not written, I guess, and
yeah, well, that's a two-way thing. So it's listening to make sure you're properly understanding. We have experience of somebody that thinks they know what you're going to say, and he jumps ahead and says, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and we go, no, listen to what I don't want you to do that. Don't assume. There's an old line, never assume. So that you've got to listen. But the other thing as well, which in my previous, I have struggled sometimes, because I know what I want, I haven't always clearly communicated that to somebody else. Because in my mind, I think, well, that bit's obvious. It may not be. So it's the communicating to other people and listening. And the other thing that's important is the way you present it, given on the situation you're in. And you can present the same message in different ways to get a better outcome with people. Yeah. And in all businesses, you've got sometimes, for example, Dan's department, estimating. A customer comes in and says, I need you to price this job for me very urgently. And if they're a good customer and we don't want to upset them and we don't want to lose them, but we haven't got the time because we're already too busy to help them out, you've got to be really careful in how you present, the way you communicate with them. And going back what Jen was saying about emails and Dan was saying about emails, there is a time for emails, but in situations like that, the way to communicate is personal level. Pick up phone and speak to the person, and they can feel your empathy and the fact that if you could help them, you would. And if they could give us another couple of weeks to price it, we can do it. For example, give them all the options, but rather than just send an email which says sorry, can't do it. Yeah, and Dan's laughing, but I've seen people do that. I've seen people say no, and you think, well, why would you send that? So it's the way you present yourself. And again, if you're working on a site, the way you present yourself to the other people on that site, which will include visits from the architects and the engineers and the clients, You've got to be able to, we a lot of clients will come over and go up to the tradespeople and say, so what are you doing here, and how do you do that, and why do you do it like that? Because they're interested in how their building's going together. They may not be professional in terms of understanding the construction process, particularly if we're building private homes for people, but they're interested to know how it works. And you've got to be able to communicate that, because ultimately you may be the carpenter who, 3 levels down the supply chain, the clients including a company who's employing a company who's employing a company who's employing a company, but ultimately that client is paying your wages. So you've got to understand of how to communicate with people. And I use the word empathy. It's understanding what the other people's thinking, what the other person's saying, and trying to tune into that, if you like, to how they want the conversation to go, how they want you to react, how they want you to respond.
And I guess you get a lot more of that in that, like you say, that personal interaction than you do in an email or a text or that version.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of that's a really important point, that, because compared to 30 years ago, when almost everything was on the phone and almost everything was face to face, now, personally, for me, I definitely would say I write more emails than I spend on the phone face to face, just because that's the way the industry's gone, not for any other reason. So by necessity, people have had to learn how to do that well. And so the point Steve was making earlier about an email that just says, sorry, can't do it. So I get emails, so that goes to the listening and comprehension thing. But I will send an inquiry to a firm, the owner of whom has been in the industry for 50 years, and emails are new to them. I'll send them an email, and the response I will get will be, no, can't do it. No, no punctuation, nothing. So I have a choice then. I can interpret that as a very rude, standoffish email, or I have to, using my English skills, work out, well, contextually, I do know this person. I know the age of this person. I know how bad they are with emails. And I have to understand contextually they're not being rude, just to flip what Steve was saying on its head a little bit, and understand that that email isn't necessarily no, we're not doing it, get out of it sort of thing. It's, as far as they're concerned, it's just a polite decline, so it'll yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, context is important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it leads on to, when you're working in any industry, but on site in particular, it's quite a robust atmosphere, shall we say, and you're trying to work with people, and if you're a manager in particular or a supervisor, you will get conflict on site. Although you'll get conflict in most office or work environments anyway, and as a supervisor or a manager, you have to learn how to manage that conflict without making it worse, how to talk people down. And a couple of things I made some notes about. It's very difficult to be assertive without being aggressive, and it's all to do with the language and the way you present your language, and body language has got a lot to do with it as well, the way people are. So if I sit in a meeting and things are getting a little bit heated, I will deliberately, I will sit back in my chair and present like an open, because I'm not being aggressive like that. I'm sitting back, and it might sound stupid, but it works. People will calm down because suddenly you're not in their face, you're listening to them. I may not agree with them, but I'm listening to them. But it's all the nuances. So it's not just the written word and the punctuation and the spelling. It's the nuances of what people are saying and how they're saying it and what they're trying to get across, and trying to understand what their problem is. I mean, the key things as well is, in any business, in any job, health and safety instructions. And again, it's never been more relevant than it is now. You have to, when you're told what those instructions are, you need to be listening, and you need to know what you're doing. You need to read all the posters. You will be given an induction on site. You need to read that. You need to understand what the risk assessments are, what the method statements are, where the risks are, where you should go, where you shouldn't go, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It's really, it could save your life. I mean, that's not a joke. It could save your life. It's very important. And the other thing, depending what you want to do, as Dan said, with what he does, negotiating. If you're negotiating, even if you're just going for a job and you're trying to negotiate more money for your salary, if you've already got a job and you're trying to negotiate a pay rise, it's understanding the language to get what you want. It's no good just walking in and saying, I need more money. You can walk in and say, look, I wanted to have a chat because I think I've done really well over the last 6 months. I've done this and this and this. I've improved. I've passed this exam, and I think I deserve to get a bit more money. And this, it's the same message.
Just going back to what you were saying about the health and safety, Steve, I was just thinking, if you're not paying attention, if you haven't read that clearly and you don't follow what's been is expected of you, you're not just putting yourself at risk, are you? You're actually putting the company at risk.
Well, you're putting other people and yourself at risk. And I have removed people from sites permanently for consistently failing to abide by health and safety rules, and not because everybody makes mistakes, nobody's perfect, but people who consistently flaunt the rules because they think they can, because they think they know better. So they're just removed from site. And talking about managing conflicts, one of them threatened to punch me. I had to resolve that as well. And he's bigger than me and fitter than me, but hey ho. But it's, that's a real life situation.
And your job is to protect the company and ensure that your employees are following the law that they need to. So,
yeah. And the other thing is, if you want to go into it, not even in our industry, we buy from suppliers. They have marketing and salespeople. Those marketing and salespeople need those skills. They have to be personable. They have to be knowledgeable about their product or what they deliver. And they, going back, have to be empathetic to our needs. So they come in to see our buyers. Jen is an honorary buyer at the moment, covering for somebody else. They come in to see our buyers and say, look, we can help you with this, we can help you with that. They're trying to sell to us and they're trying to understand our needs so they can convince us that theirs is the best company to go to buy those products. And we spend a lot of money. We spend millions of pounds every year to buy materials. So it's an important thing, and it's your relationships. If you want to improve your chances of getting a job, whether you're as an individual or a company, it's networking, and more relationships with people you have. Whilst that person one can't help you, person one might have some friends or contacts. So that's not A, and then suddenly you're introduced to B and C and D and E, and suddenly you've got this whole range of people that can help you with your business and contribute to your business.
Yeah, and that's those personal skills, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just on a tangent, going back to something Steve said earlier about contracts. So contracts are wordy and dense, and the first time you read through a contract, it is complicated, however good your English skills are. So, obviously a little bit of contract law and understanding comes into it, but predominantly, if you are working with contracts, you need to understand every word of them, because they are fundamental to the industry. And you are not going to be able to do that if your English skills aren't there. So it's really important in that side of things. And similarly, the construction industry, if you worked in the construction industry, your lexicon is going to grow every day, because there are funny words for everything that are the correct terminology. Bricks have frogs on them. That you need to learn that and understand that and apply that. In Brighton, we look at things when we're demolishing. We have to make sure something isn't made of bungaroosh. That's a real word, and because there are so many trades and so many words involved. If you need to remember them, know what they mean, understand them contextually, and then apply them moving forwards. Because if I'm speaking to a demolition company and I tell them it's a bungaroosh wall you're going to have to get rid of, if they don't know what it is, I've then got to explain it to them. So there's it's a bit like like your math skills, English skills are absolutely everywhere.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to, sorry, Jen, go on.
So and you're constantly learning new ones anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, willingness to learn is important.
Willingness to learn. And going back to what Dan said about the contracts, of course, when you get a job, you have to sign a contract of employment. You don't understand what you're signing up to, that could cause you a problem. When you say, well, I'm booking my holiday next week, and they say, well, actually, you can't do that. You're supposed to give us 4 weeks notice before you book holiday. So you can't have your holiday. And you go, well, I've already paid for it. And they go, well, tough, you've got to come to work. You know, I mean, that's an extreme example, but those sorts of things. And if you buy a house, a flat, a car, some furniture, you'll usually be signing a contract. You need to understand what you're signing up to. So it's important in all the time.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning. I really appreciate you feeding back to our students, and we'll be sharing this not just with the students at Hailsham Community College, but I think the Careers Hub will be sharing it with students across the county. So it really is appreciated by us and the other schools too, for the time that you've given for this and the other videos that we've done. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dennis. Cheers. Thank you.